All right, well, we'll go ahead and kick off today's webinar. I want to thank you for joining us for the session, Taking Your Brand Offline and Into the Real World with Scott Clanin of Clanin Marketing. Before I hand it over to Scott, just a few quick things to cover. You are welcome to ask questions throughout the session. We just ask that you submit those via the chat box and we'll cover them once Scott is done with his presentation. We also have a handful of community partners co-hosting today's session with us. So in the follow-up email you'll receive later today, it will include a recording of the session along with a link to download a copy of the presentation and links to all of those community partner websites. So if you want to check out any additional information about them, you can. And speaking about websites, you may have noticed ours is under construction. So right now we do not have an events calendar, but Scott and I have worked together to put together 7 additional sessions for September through December of this year, and those can all be found on the Clanin Marketing website. So that'll be the easiest way to find those specific sessions. If you're looking for other sessions we hold at the SBDC, whether it's starting your business, writing a business plan, or any of those topics, you can find those on our Facebook page, which I know is a little inconvenient, but it's the easiest way right now to find all of that information. So I'll include all of that in the follow-up email as well. So at this time, I'll hand it over to Scott and we'll get started.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jordan, and good morning. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. I'll be sharing my screen, so one moment while I pull that up. All right, Jordan, just confirm, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. All right, well, again, welcome. Good morning. This is Taking Your Brand Offline and Into the Real World. So all about environmental branding. This is kind of a unique concept when it comes to your brand. Oftentimes, people don't think this far out when they are developing a brand. But today, I'm really here to kind of give you some tips and tricks and thought starters, ideas on how to take your brand more offline, right? Outside of just your website, outside of just some print material, and how to apply it for a physical space. So if you have maybe a company vehicle, if you have an office space where you do have customers or clients that visit you, take a lot of these ideas in consideration. And one thing I wanted to know is that everything that we discussed today, again, these are all just those thought starters. And so some of this may apply to some on the call, and it may not apply, but it may not apply to everyone. So again, we're going to go over a handful of different examples with you today. As Jordan mentioned, if you'd like a PDF copy of today's presentation, you can visit our website at claninmarketing.com/workshops. We have moved this section up on our page now. So this is right underneath our schedule. You'll see a little section for recent workshop attendees. Just fill out your name and email, and again, you'll get a PDF copy of today's presentation. Like Jordan mentioned, we worked on developing 7 more webinar topics for the rest of 2023. These are all free thanks to the SBDC and our local community partners. Again, that whole schedule can also be found on this website. We have everything from advertising on Facebook, getting started on Canva, and more. So I definitely invite you to join us on a future webinar. Like Jordan mentioned as well, if you have any questions during today's presentation, you can ask that in the chat box. My name is Scott Clanin. I am the owner of Clanin Marketing. We're a full-service marketing and creative agency based in downtown Champaign that serve clients all across the Midwest. We do everything from brand builds, website development, digital marketing, and more. So really working as an outsourced marketing department for many different organizations across the Midwest. All right. So this is a newer topic in our library that I think we rolled out late last year. And this is all about, again, taking your brand offline and applying it into the physical, into the real world. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to go over just branding basics. Before you get to environmental branding, you do need to have a few things in place. And so that's what I want to review with you first, are just those branding basics. We're going to talk about what exactly is environmental branding, the benefits that come along with it, some examples. I'm going to be giving some examples, some local examples here in Champaign County, examples that I found online, and then a couple of examples that we even did in our office. We're a small business, so we didn't have a huge budget when we were moving to our office last year. But we did work to apply a few kind of environmental branding tactics into our space that really helps create a certain vibe, a certain atmosphere in our physical office. Use cases and ideas, and then I want to leave you with just developing an overall checklist that will help you get started. So let's dive into it. Okay, we're going to start with the overall branding basics. So when you talk about a brand, a lot of times people think of your logo, right? Oh, that's your logo, that's my colors, that's my font that I'm using. And that's correct, but usually that is kind of the last stage of any branding project, and that's more brand identity. But your brand is comprised of a variety of different things: brand messaging, and then brand identity. And so brand messaging identity, this is your story. So your purpose, your mission, your vision, your values, your brand promise, your tagline, what you stand for, brand pillars, specific strengths and differentiators. What makes you you? We all have competition. And so why should a client pick using you for your product or services versus a competitor that might be in the same area, that might be right down the road? So what are those differentiators? And then of course you have your brand visuals. So again, this is what a lot of times people think of when it comes to branding. And this is correct, your logo mark, your colors, your fonts, photography, and any other visuals. But your brand are all these things, right? It's a puzzle. And these are all pieces of that particular puzzle. We have a whole separate webinar that we may be giving next year just on branding itself. And this is really what we cover in that webinar, is unpacking what goes into a brand story, a brand promise, a brand pillars, and then of course all of your brand visuals. So if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, definitely keep an eye out. We may be doing that again next year. Okay, so those are your kind of the basics of a brand, right? So where does your brand typically live? Your website is a big one. I always say your website is your hardest working marketing tool. Everyone should have it. It's constantly marketing your products and services 24/7. So this is a very common place where you see your brand shine. You have your brand identity, your colors, your fonts, your story, right? Your brand copy. Then you have, of course, social media. We pretty much all have a presence on social media, whether that be LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, but we have our bios completed on there, our business pages claimed, our usernames and logos uploaded on our social media accounts. Stationery, of course, this could also include just a variety of what I call marketing collateral, those leave behinds, the flyers, the brochures, business cards, stationery, email signatures. Again, your brand is all applied through those items. Of course, advertisements. So these are commercials, billboards, print ads that you run in the paper, and any type of promotional item, pins, giveaways, any type of packaging. For those on the call who are, brick and mortar, maybe retail stores, you sell products that maybe you ship to people. Maybe your boxes, your poly bags are all branded. But this is where when you think of branding, this is where a lot of times you see it on your website, on social media, stationery, etc. But what else can we do to apply your brand beyond this, right? So this is where we start looking at physical space. So think outside the box and consider environmental branding. So, and I put a little asterisk there, beyond your front door logo. I've worked with a number of businesses where maybe they've moved into a new office and they get all set up, right? Maybe they also went through a rebrand, right? During this office transition, they have a website, they have social media presence, but then they move into the physical office, right? And this office maybe has an area for customers to come in. Maybe this is a store, right? Where you're selling your actual product. And a lot of times people think of, oh, we need to get signage out from the building, and then we need to get something on our door, right? Our logo or hours, etc. But oftentimes what I've seen is that's it. People kind of stop thinking of the brand after they put the sign up, but they don't really think about, well, what about the inside of the space, right? What about the wall colors? What about the furniture? What about our mission statement, right? How can we apply who we are as a company or organization into our physical space. And again, I'm going to be giving you some ideas here. This is just an example I found online, but I believe this might have just been an open office or open workspace with cubicles. And this is more of a kind of internal messaging, more for employees to boost employee morale. And I love this, right? You have this beautiful dark blue wall. You have these pops of color, which are, I would assume, are colors from this company's brand. And this may be a call center. This may be a customer support area. But you're creating this brand atmosphere not only for external customers, but in this example, you're creating it for your internal employees, right? The internal atmosphere. So again, we'll go over some more examples here in a bit. So let's talk about kind of exactly what is environmental branding. So this extends the experience of an organization's brand or characteristics as expressed in name, symbols, or designs of the interior or exterior physical setting. So basically, you're thinking of architecture, interiors, lighting, graphics is a big thing when it comes to environmental branding, showrooms, office environments, and more. So you're carrying the brand throughout the space. So the example I always give is, I love the example of Jimmy John's. We've probably all been to Jimmy John's, right? We've walked into a Jimmy John's and it certainly has an atmosphere, right? There's a lot of cool signage on the walls. It's consistent. So if I walk into a Jimmy John's in Champaign and then I walk into a Jimmy John's in Chicago or in just an entirely different state, it's going to be consistent, right? Because they've thought of the brand in a physical application. But then beyond that, and we'll talk about this more too, it's all about the customer interaction. It's yes, graphics on the wall. It's applying our logo or our kind of brand story, certain visuals, certain colors, but it's also how their employees, your employees, interact with your customers. So if we walk into a Jimmy John's, one of the first things they do is, hey, how are you, right? They're very energetic. They're excited to see you. And that's all part of their brand. So there's several things that go into it. Of course, one of them is being visual elements. So this is colors, typography, logos. This is consistent with your brand identity. So if you haven't already, and we'll go through this when we go through the checklist, make sure when you are looking at your physical space, you have your brand set, right? You have your brand color or colors. You have certain fonts that you use, a certain imagery that you use, and you're creating this kind of cohesive look. So when I say you have consistent colors and fonts, make sure you have some sort of cheat sheet developed for your brand. You have your color codes on that cheat sheet. You have your font names listed. So for an example of this, if you want to do some Googling afterwards, a lot of times this is called brand guidelines, brand standards. And you'll see a variety of different examples online. Of course, big companies have these brand booklets, that multi-page booklets that talk all about the brand. But a lot of times for smaller businesses, just a one-page will do, where at least you have a recorded document of your official colors. One thing to keep in mind, and you'll see in these examples, you have color codes for your digital colors, right? So we use a certain blue for our logo. It's the same RGB color or hex code for all of our kind of digital applications, for our website, anything that we're designing digitally, we have that color code. But when you want to start developing items for a physical application, you're going to start hearing the word Pantone. And Pantone is the official kind of keepers of color, if you will. This will give you your actual Pantone color, and there's all these booklets, almost like a paint sample booklet, but for Pantone color. And this is where you start looking at, you have your digital color, but this is where you start diving into your physical color. So you want to make sure you find your Pantone color code anytime you're doing any type of physical application. So we've been asked what our Pantone color is, just to give you some examples. when we were developing our what we call a trade show kit, or if we went to a conference, right? And you have like a table skirt. We wanted our table skirt in our blue color. And so they asked for our Pantone color. We put our logo, and you're going to see a photo of this. We put our logo out in the hallway in this kind of raised letter with blue behind it. They wanted our Pantone color for that. So any physical print application, I've also seen that for vehicle wraps. They will want to know what your Pantone color is. So if you don't know what that is, don't worry. A lot of times printing companies can help you identify what your Pantone color is. But as we're going through some examples and you start thinking of, ooh, I should think of that for my space, there's a good chance that you're going to need to know what your Pantone color is for your brand colors. Physical elements, so architecture, interior design, layout, signage, and even furnishings can be strategically designed to reflect the brand's personality. And that's exactly what we did for our office. So we moved into, if you're familiar with the Champaign area, the old Orpheum Theater in downtown Champaign. It was built in 1914. The rooms that we have up here were the old boarding rooms. So there's a lot of really cool historic character up here in the office. But we didn't want it to feel too old up here, right? We're kind of a modern creative agency. So we blended it very strategically with certain furnishings that would counterbalance the historic feel up here. And so we thought of a lot of things. The little stools that we have, the collaborative stools that we have in our office, they're all in a fabric that's the exact same shade of our blue, right? And you're going to see all these photos here. We really thought of conference room design, because that's a big thing when it comes to a client experience when they come into your space. When they sit down, what type of chair do we want to have? What type of water do we want to serve? All of that ties into your brand. It's all about the experience that you're looking to deliver. And then lastly, we have these other elements here that this could be customer service, like what we talked about with Jimmy John's, interactive displays. A lot of times we've seen things like music, scents, right? So if you walk into a more of an upscale hotel, or like a casino, right? A lot of times there's scents that they pump out, and this is a whole nother subject when it comes to marketing and branding, is this kind of sensory element. And this is where, because a lot of times we have great memories when we recognize a certain scent, whether that be cooking that your grandmother made, right? You go back to a certain memory of that. Same thing when it comes to marketing and branding. Certain companies or organizations have developed their own kind of scent when you walk in that's really nice and pleasant, and you start developing a memory for that scent. And so those are all things that we kind of thought of when we moved into our space, especially since we bring a lot of clients in or customers into our space. We don't sell a physical product, right? So it's all about the experience. It's all about the meeting. And so we thought of, what the lighting is like, and what, do we have a diffuser in our conference room? Do we play music kind of in the common areas? And so we're creating that kind of vibe, that kind of that brand experience, beyond just putting a logo on the wall, if that makes sense. So why should a company adopt environmental branding? One, it helps cultivate team spirit. By unifying the space in which your team works under a common banner, your office or workspace can become the living physical embodiment of the things you stand for as a company. So it really helps unify the team. If you think back to the example that I showed with that photo, with that kind of quote on the wall and being experts, it's kind of this team message, if you will, right? So you're cultivating this team spirit. It helps your staff work at the best. According to studies, a unified company culture has a direct impact on employee performance. A branded workspace environment can help elevate and unify company culture through strong design and messaging. Kind of going off this a bit more too, I've visited a lot of clients over the years in their office spaces, and some of the coolest offices that I went into were ones that I could tell spent a little bit of time putting their story into their physical space, right? They have historic photos on the wall of how they got started. They have their mission statement and their core values and what they stand for more on the back end where the employees are, right? To create this kind of unified, this unified feeling. But one thing to keep in mind too, for those on the call, maybe you're a little bit of a larger company, you have a physical office space, and you're struggling with recruiting. You know, when young individuals anymore, when they're, you know, keep diving through the available opportunities there are out there in the workplace, you know, they're interviewing at different offices, they're touring different buildings, and salary, of course, is a big thing. Benefits, of course, is a big thing. But part of it too is just, do I want to work in that office every day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, right? You want to create a really cool atmosphere, a cool environment that your employees enjoy coming to, enjoy coming into work. And so it could also help with just overall recruitment as well. It speaks volumes to clients and customers. So one of the most significant benefits of a branded environment is the first impression it leaves with clients and customers. So going back to the example that we have, you know, we don't have a physical product that we sell. We sell our services as a business to business type of company. And so the only thing that really we could focus on, in addition to just producing quality work and having, you know, good referrals, is creating a great experience anytime we interact with a customer. And that is all part of what we thought of when we were building out our space. And then again, that recruitment, it helps attract and retain the best talent. So clients and customers aren't the only demanding markets you'll need to appeal to. If you want to attract and retain the best talent to work for your business, and branded environment can make a big difference. And I have certainly seen it when I've visited a lot of different companies and organizations. And we've all seen this too, right? You know, you walk into an office like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is a really cool space. But really think about why. Why is it cool, right? Is it furnishings? Is it because they have really cool things on the wall? But at the end of the day, it's probably because it has a consistent look to it. You feel something when you walk into that space. Just some additional benefits when it comes to environmental branding, and then we'll get to some examples here. It's memorable. So a well-designed environment can make the brand more memorable, leading to better brand recall and recognition. You know, when I travel, we like to go to different, you know, restaurants or little cafes, locally owned places. And some of the places that I remember the most are, again, these ones that were branded a bit more. It wasn't just a place that was kind of just thrown together, right? There was no thought into kind of what went into the physical space. But it was, oh, they had, you know, these light fixtures that were orange that matched their logo, the exact same color, right? It was, oh, they had kind of what they stand for on the wall. There was something with it that made that memorable. Emotional connection. So when customers have a positive emotional experience in a branded environment, they're more likely to form a stronger emotional connection with the brand, right? So they become almost this brand advocate. Environmental branding helps a brand stand out from competitors by offering a unique and immersive experience. You know, one of the clients that we helped, again, if you are familiar with the Champaign area, is Martinelli's Market in downtown Champaign. And on the walls, they have these really cool black and white photos of kind of their family legacy of the old Martinelli's Market back in Wisconsin. But they also wanted to get across that they don't use preservatives in any of their baked, you know, their baked breads. And so they do everything the real way, the traditional way of baking. And so we wanted to make sure we got that across. And so we went through and applied some of those brand statements and, you know, what we stand for, 3 things that they stand for, what we value, 3 things that they value. And then we have the mission statement on the wall, kind of in some common areas too. We wanted to really get across that they are different from other maybe local bakeries here in the area. Consistency is key. This is not only in your physical space, but your brand as a whole, if you do join us in one of our future branding workshops. But, you know, if I go to your website, right, if I'm exploring a few things, I'm seeing certain fonts, I'm seeing certain colors. If I open an email from you, I want to see a consistent look through that as well. If I get a business card, if I get a mailer come in, Again, all very, very consistent. Same thing should be applied to your physical space too. It should have a very nice, consistent feel to it. And increased engagement. So engaging and immersing the environment, encourage customers to spend more time interacting with the brand. So let's go through some examples. One of the examples I really like, this is not from us. So you'll see through a lot of these examples, I put some sources here in the corner if you want to explore more. But Harvest Market in Champaign, right? So this is more of an upscale produce, grocery, market, cafe. There's a lot of different things within Harvest Market. And again, they could easily build a building and put up some signage, right? And open the door, but they were really strategic with the feel, their brand consistency throughout digital applications, website, social media, but also physical applications. So you'll see that they have this logo here, which is a tractor. These are two tires on the back of a tractor. So you're looking at it from the rear. Of course, these really pretty green colors, right? This is all about kind of local, these local tie-in. The word harvest is in the name. So I love how they use this kind of green color here. And then they apply it to all their other materials, right? So they use that same green on signage. They use the fonts on different things. You have that applied on now physical material, your bags in this case. Of course, we have stationery. We talked about that earlier, but it kind of starts here about how to even work to apply it into a physical application. Farmhouse Restaurant is within Harvest Market. What I like about this, and I give this example in our brand webinar, but this is, again, kind of a modern take on a farmhouse restaurant, right? So you have this serif font in farmhouse, those kind of tick marks, but then you have this really beautiful kerning, the spacing between the letters that is spread out that gives that kind of modern feel. Yellow and gray is very kind of a modern color palette. So they use that with this kind of pops of aqua, these little really cool modern outlined icons here. But then they work to start applying it to more physical applications. So now you have your bag, you have your coffee cup, you have a sandwich that's wrapped up in a bag, you have that yellow tape on it, coasters, right? It starts becoming this physical thing. And so when you start now looking at the physical space itself, really look at all the strategic decisions that were made. So you have these light fixtures, you kind of have an eclectic feel of industrial light fixtures that you may find on a farm, right? There's kind of really cool Edison bulbs. If you look at the chairs, all the chairs are different, right? Very eclectic wooden chairs, right? That kind of gives you a throwback feel, but mixing them up a little bit, having those kind of spindles on the back creates that kind of more of a modern feel. And then you see that yellow that's applied on the windows there. If you look very closely on the right-hand side, you see the little windmill there. You have the aqua line icons there. They have some messaging. The grass is always greener on the other side, the creamer the crop, etc. And so again, they're creating this kind of physical atmosphere through brand elements. You have some more examples here. On the second floor, again, that gray wall color, and then they have that yellow from their logo, the yellow barn icon that's front and center on that wall. Again, Pantone color, so they got their Pantone color to make sure that it's that consistent yellow. I actually saw an example of that stood out to me in the freezer section of the grocery store. Reese's, we all know Reese's, right? The little peanut butter cups. They have that distinct orange, and this is a great example of consistency. We know what that orange is, right? We see it in the checkout aisle when we are looking at different candies or gums, and you see Reese's right there, that orange pops. Halloween, it's all about that orange. But they have this new frozen treat, and so their box is in that exact shade of orange. But the only way they got that exact shade of orange is because they have a very good handle of what their Pantone colors are, right? So no matter what application you print your brand materials on, it's all very consistent across the board. If you look further on that photo on the left-hand side, you have the black and white image of the field. I love that to kind of bring into that kind of farmhouse feel. But then you have that kind of yellow, really cool splash of yellow, break new ground, is what it says there on the left. You have the coffee mug there in the middle, again with that yellow on it, some bags of coffee, again, all physical elements there. And then on the right-hand side, just another image of the space there. So this is obviously they worked with some sort of interior designer, but they were very strategic to make sure that the decisions they made with like the color of the cushions, the chairs, all fit within the brand. Just some other examples of inside the space, the fonts they're using, the imagery that they're using, right? Kind of in the dairy section, they have this whole column here with these jars of probably, obviously fake milk, but to look like these kind of old school bottles of milk, right? You're creating a vibe, you're creating a certain atmosphere. So we moved into our office early last year. And it's a unique office because we're on the second floor of a building. We do have a front door from the ground entrance, but right when you walk in, we don't have a formal entryway or like a lobby. You just kind of go right up the stairs. And so we wanted to start thinking of what are all the areas in our space that are customer facing. Because again, this is where we wanted to make sure, since we don't really sell a physical thing, we want to make sure that the experience comes through in every touch point that the client has. So we walked through the space as if a customer would and started thinking of, okay, you walk in, you turn to go up the stairs. What do you see right on that wall? There's an opportunity for us to put something. You go up the stairs a little bit, you turn again to go up a longer set of stairs. What's on that wall? There's an opportunity for us to put something there. So we started thinking of how customers interact with the space and started building out some ideas around that. This was our front window when we first moved in. Again, very simple. We have just the logo on the glass. This is what a lot of people do, right? We ended up changing out our front window a bit more, again, to add more of our story. So it's a unique area because it's not huge. It's this weird little nook in front of the glass. And so we put up these banners here that kind of story tell who we are. So we build brands and craft incredible stories. The other banner is meant to switch out. This is where we just feature work, almost kind of like a gallery, if you will. Feature work a couple times each quarter. And so this was a way for us, instead of just these cool snake plants, to do a little more storytelling just right in the front window. We just, again, with that being kind of a unique space. As you go up the stairs, we knew that we wanted to have at least something on the wall. And so right now we had this little saying, the beginning of something great, welcome to Clanin Marketing. These are almost stickers, if you will. This is just an adhesive, a vinyl adhesive that a company came over by, they printed it, and then they just stuck to the wall. So this is not raised. The reason why I didn't want this raised is we weren't sure if we wanted this forever. And it was very low cost at the time. So it's very, very inexpensive. But you can see it starts creating a atmosphere, a feel. That blue is in our common blue. And so we, again, use the Pantone color to make sure that blue is correct. As you go up the stairs, this is raised. It's kind of clear acrylic, but behind it, we do have that blue color. Again, it's that same blue that's down the stairs, Pantone. And then as you look down the hall, again, this was where we turn the corner. Okay, this is now, you go towards the conference room, but this is where a client sees this kind of blank wall. We installed this really cool floor-to-ceiling black and white photo of the marquee, and then incorporated, because it was a dark, scary looking little corner, we incorporated this really cool light at the bottom that is in our blue that shines up on that wall. And so again, all this, that light came from Amazon. The company that installed the beginning of something great, they did the same for that wall there. I would say with these examples, I'm going to show you some other ones, we probably spent under maybe under like $800 for all of this right now. And so, but it elevates everything, right? It just creates an official kind of feel to the overall office. One of the other things when you're thinking of like imagery, we knew that we were in a cool spot, so we wanted to showcase the history of the building. And so we put everything in these black and white images. But as a company, we're very family focused. So, we're very supportive of each other's families and family lives. And we wanted to make sure that that is applied into the space as well. So all of our employees have these black and white images of their families that go down the whole hallway. These are just photos of the team here. But we purposely did black and white because you'll see in a second, one of our other items when it comes to our brand is that we really wanted to showcase that the work that we did, right? So we created more kind of an art gallery space with just pure white walls. You'll see here, these are frames that we honestly, I think we got at Walmart or Target, white frames. We had a local printing company print these posters that we designed. But again, it's all in that blue color. So we have these rotating posters there. That little collaboration stool that I mentioned earlier is there in that same blue. And then we have a pop-up banner, again, with that Pantone color blue there in the corner that we typically take to like meetings, events, conferences, etc. So again, very inexpensive way to start creating kind of a tight look. And I will say there's a lot more that we can do, right? There's always more that you can do. But what are little things that really help just tie the space together that displays or showcases your brand? And the big thing for us, why we want to do black and white images, white walls, is we wanted the space to showcase our work and rotate our work throughout the space, again, almost like a gallery. So the spotlight and the highlight of our brand is really on the work that we do, not necessarily us per se. It's more of the work. And so that's why it's all very clean palette, so that our work doesn't compete with anything else in the space itself. So again, just a little example of what we did that was pretty inexpensive, but it was really all about the thought of every element when it comes to how the space works, not only with your employees, but how the space works with your customers as well. Before we move on to other ideas, even when we got into like the conference room was a big thing for me. And I was very kind of picky on everything that went into it, from the table to even the chairs. You know, we've all been into meetings where you sit into a chair and it's all wonky, right? The arms are all weird, they're up and down, you don't know how to adjust it, they're loose, it's just kind of uncomfortable, and then you just sit there in this uncomfortable chair. And so we wanted to make sure that, like, you know, the chairs that we apply in our space have fixed arms. And so little details like that all tie back into the customer experience, or things that I encourage you to think about when you are working to apply your brand and who you are more into the space itself. So just some other examples here. This is an example from Dean's Graphics. They're actually located in Champaign. They did a lot of our work and a lot of our clients' work. But this is just, I believe this might be a break room. But again, really cool imagery of kind of a cut through of a truck. Just some other use cases and ideas, and we'll go through some of the photos there on the right-hand side. Wayfinding and placemaking solutions. So maybe you have a larger office where you need to point people in the right direction. Perfect example of environmental branding, whether that be small little signage on the wall, larger floor graphics. These could be window graphics. Again, something as simple as just your logo on the door, but where you list your hours and your URL, are you using the same fonts that you use on everything else? That goes back into that tip of consistency. Elevator reps I've seen that are really cool. If you have an elevator in your space, you have those two doors that close, that could easily be wrapped. Vehicle reps, we'll talk about vehicle reps here in a second, but these are essentially moving billboards. These are vehicles that, instead of just putting a magnet on the side, which still works, better than nothing, but if you do have a little more money to spend, I think a vehicle, especially if you're zipping around in your market area, target market area, this is a good investment, because again, it's a moving billboard. Wall murals, and again, what type of art, decor, and furniture that you want. And so the other thing that we wanted to make sure that we do is, in addition to the work that we're showcasing, we want to make sure that we support, you know, our local artists. So we're working to incorporate more local art into our space. Just some ideas here on the right-hand side. You have in the very far right corner, just something as simple as the logo mark. This is in a frosted vinyl on the door that looks really nice. But if you look above it, you see Decatur City preschool entrance with an arrow that points through. Really cool example of some environmental branding. They're using probably a font that's used elsewhere. It's easy to identify on the white wall. You have the black arrow, and it's kind of modern and cool, right? It kind of wraps around the corner there, and it's saying that this is the entrance. Wayfinding here with that big column that says consultation with the arrow to point people where they need to go. Concierge, right? You have that kind of raised letter there. You're kind of branding out this kind of first touch point when someone walks into space. And I think this is probably like a little waiting room. The furniture again was selected very strategically, but then you have this, logo mark, I believe. I believe that might say maybe their mission statement or vision statement there in the wall, but you can kind of see it's anchored by these colored elements that pull colors from the logo. So they all kind of have a nice consistent look to it. Another example is Bacon Bed and Bus Skirt. This is a photo of one of their older trucks. And this is very standard. This is what we see a lot of times, of just kind of simple white truck with the logo and maybe a tagline or URL underneath it. But what are ways to elevate this look, right? How to get their brand across a little bit more. They have this really cool bright kind of red color that they really wanted to get across. And so this is, how can we take this van, and instead of just putting a logo on the door, take it a step further, right? This is zipping around their market area. We want more eyes on it. And so thinking of, how the van works, on the top right-hand side, those panels there, that kind of weird grid box, this is where big glass panels stand up there. So there's no way that we could put text on that side, but on the other side, we wanted to make sure that we get across that they do residential glass repair and replacement. So that was something that needed to be included. And at the very bottom, a little blurry there, but it shows the different types of services that they offer. So shower doors, glass and mirrors, windows and doors, service and repair. On the back, they have the little tagline of traditional service, modern design. And you can see kind of how it looks all together. This isn't what I consider a full wrap design that wraps every surface area of the van. This is more of a half wrap, or just a section of the van is wrapped. But you can see how impactful it ends up looking. They really think about, okay, again, more environmental, that customer interaction. All the employees have a very similar, if not the same, red shirt, white version of the horizontal variation of the logo on the back. It all has a nice tight, again, keyword consistent look across everything. And you kind of see the back of the van there with that wrap, traditional service, modern design. There's some great companies within this target area, if you are joining us from Champaign County, that do a lot of vehicle wraps. And again, they can certainly help you with design too, but think beyond, again, think outside the box. What else can we apply our brand to that would, again, get a lot of eyes on it? Other example here, we have about 15 minutes, is Logic. Unfortunately, Logic here in Champaign did end up closing, but they did a great job with all of their branding. They did work with a creative agency, but you can still, if you don't have the investment, the funds to work with a big creative agency, create things, you could still do things yourself, right? It's just all about gathering ideas, gathering inspiration, and really seeing what works for you and your brand. You can kind of see here on the left-hand side, we have the print material. So these are the folders, the stationery, the pens, the colors that they use for the mug. It all has a very consistent look. The photography that they use, again, all has a certain look and feel to it. They had a variety of different families of brands. And so just kind of showing what the brands look like. But most importantly, how does it work in a physical space? So this is actually from the creative agency layer list at the bottom. If you ever went into Logic, this was a really cool vibe. They were very strategic with everything that they selected, right? They have a really cool logo and brand, but then how do we apply this certain feeling to the physical space? Down to the carpet that they selected, the chairs, the colors, the fabric. And you kind of see from these examples, it all works. You start seeing this vibe, this really fun, electric, energetic vibe that you get from like Market Cafe, the colors that they use, the chairs that they use, that they were very strategic with making sure that those chairs were in that certain orange that's used in the logo itself. Again, this was a very large budget example, but you could still get some ideas and inspiration when you are thinking of your own space. All about consistency. All right, let's go through your checklist. So hopefully you started thinking of your own space and how you can start applying your brand, not only your logo identity, but your differentiators, your story, right, into your physical space, whether that be into a brick and mortar, you're an office space, you have vehicles that kind of zip around town, whatever it may be. Start thinking of how can you apply your brand a little bit further. So the first thing on the checklist is develop your brand messaging and visuals if you haven't already. Maybe you already have your logo, but you don't really have your standard set. You don't have your color codes identified, your fonts. Work together all of that. Next, really work to identify your zones. So what are the areas in your office that you can brand? We did this with a counseling center that really had no branding. It was just kind of more of a tired looking colors that they had. They had this waiting room with nothing on the wall. They did have a front desk, but there was nothing on the front desk. And so we started, when we walked in, we started thinking of, okay, let's think of the waiting room. We definitely want some really cool visuals here. On the front desk, we want that to say welcome with this really cool logo mark, their logo mark over the word welcome. And they had this long wall that had nothing on it. So we worked, let's pull some of your favorite inspirational, motivational quotes that you like to maybe even give some of your clients. We put those on posters, very similar to the posters that you saw in our office. Each poster it rotated in their different brand colors. So one was orange, blue, white, orange, blue, white down the hallway. Inexpensive, but huge impact. It really helps create kind of a larger feel, nice, consistent feel throughout. So what are the zones in your office or in your physical space that you could maybe apply some branding to? Identify what creative or messaging you want to apply into those zones. Of course, take measurements, take them again, and take them a third time. I always triple check all of our measurements before we're working with a printer, or the printing company may be able to come over and just take those measurements for you. Where is everything going, right? Develop, of course, what your budget is. This will help you then work with a company to either develop some of these brand visuals for you, or the printing company, so they can come to the table with some unique ideas, right? Inexpensive things are more like adhesive decals on the wall. Once you start getting more raised elements, that's when it starts getting a little more expensive. And so you kind of see over here on the right-hand side, a lot of this is flat. I believe that's kind of a just decal on the wall. But again, once you start getting to more raised, you're going to spend a little more. Think in phases. Not everything has to be done at once. I certainly have ideas, at least in our physical space, of how to apply more of our brand in other areas. But again, more for phase 2 down the road. And then, of course, work with your designer and printer. If you're doing this yourself in-house, great. Just make sure that you are identifying, your color codes, you have your measurements, you know exactly what you want. Or come to the table with a designer, come to the table with a printer with some ideas, explain who you are as a brand, what you want to get across. Tell me more about your customers. What are they looking for? Who are you and why are you different from some of your other competitors? And again, as a team, your designer and printer can come up with some really unique ideas for your space. So that brings us to the end of, again, some ideas to apply your physical space beyond just your website or stationery, some of those common materials, and apply it into the real world, into your physical space. So I hope you gathered at least some ideas, right, through some of this inspiration. It doesn't need to be an expensive endeavor. You can certainly get creative, but it's all about just, taking some time to think strategically and how to apply your brand well into a physical space. So I'm going to hand it over to Jordan to see if we have any questions come through, and we'll go from there.
Thanks so much, Scott. We don't have any questions right now. We did get one chat that says an attendee joined late. So I will say that you will get the recording of the session, and I'll include the link that I shared earlier in the chat where you can download a copy of the presentation. So if you want to click through it versus listening to it, or whatever your preference is, you'll be able to do that. But I don't see anything else. Yes, you will still receive the follow-up because you did log on. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, even if something caught you up. I do want to reiterate, because I know we've had some people come and go throughout the session. We do have the rest of the year scheduled. So I'll include information where you can find all of those. Excuse me. We are holding 2 sessions a month, except for December. We all know everyone gets a little hectic around the holidays. So we are only doing one that month, but we do have some great returning topics we've covered in the past, along with some new upcoming ones. So look forward to those.
And I will say too, just to chime in, we did strategically, for those still on the call that maybe sell a physical product, we did add getting ready for holiday shopping. October, was it end of October? Is that what we did?
Correct, yep.
So it gives you at least a little bit of time to get a few things in order before the major shopping season. So be sure to join us for that one.
Yeah, and once again, our website is under construction. So if you go looking for something and can't find it, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to help. As many of you know from joining past sessions with Scott, we do have some small business service programs going on with Scott and his team right now. So if you're looking for some additional information on those, whether it be the social media audit, website audit, or the brand jumpstart, please reach out to myself or our director, Madeline, and we can connect you to that information and the application to apply as well. All right, well, I don't see any questions, so thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you so much, Scott, for presenting.
Yep, thank you all. I hope to see you at the next webinar. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.